Good afternoon, Xbox Nation. Welcome to today's new episode of Xbox One-on-One. Now, we are doing things a little different, and we might continue down this road as we, try and tweak things with this new Xbox show that we're doing weekly. Obviously, it was originally pitched that it's going to be normally just me and Zemi talking about Xbox news, games, and doing potentially some reviews of upcoming titles. But today we actually have Kirby Louise here to talk about one of the big topics of today's show. And of course, you've been reading the rumors that a big announcement coming in the next couple of days, potentially as soon as this week, about backwards compatibility on the Xbox Series X and S. And you know what? We have Kirby Louise, who, of course, is not only an amazing community member, but he's also a developer who may know a thing or two about what is happening. He has an incredible theory. As a matter of fact, he even has a slideshow that he is going to bring to explain exactly how this is going to be happening and how big of a deal it's going to be towards the fans of older games. And quite frankly, just because a game is old does not make it a game that you may or may not want to play. And before we get to Kirby, let's welcome in the cog that keeps these shows running. You know him as part-time chef, part-time gaming site guru. I know him as one of my good friends and cog to this show. Zemi Games, welcome, brother.
Well, thank you so much, Boom. Dude, super excited. Yeah, man, I really absolutely love doing this Tuesday show with you, man. It really is a lot of fun. We have some excellent topics lined up. And everyone in chat, if you start hearing my teeth chatter, just let me know because it is so freaking cold where I'm at right now. I am so cold right now. But yeah, Boom, super excited to be here, man.
Well, thanks for being here, and hopefully you can warm up with a hot cup of tea or something. I prefer coffee, but hopefully you do have that. Kirby Louise, welcome to the program, brother. You've been on the show before, more specifically the Xbox Factor podcast, but you reached out to me through DM, and you said you wanted to join us when I was telling you about this particular topic. First of all, excited to have you here, excited to bring some knowledge here. Welcome to the program, dude.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm real excited to discuss the potential implications of this new rumored technology for back-compat games.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. See, look, the one thing we have to immediately throw to the forefront of the conversation is Xbox is doing some things that the other two giants are not, and I'm talking about both Sony and Nintendo. And, here's a perfect example of why Microsoft continues to do it right by their fans. And you know something, I'm going to immediately put myself into the spotlight here as being one of the problems that what I'm going to discuss next, it exists. Last week, Nintendo released Mario 3D World for the Nintendo Switch. The game is getting 9s and 10s. For it's a game that's a couple of years old. It's basically a rehash. And of course, I ran to the store and I bought it with the two amiibos. And more specifically, I went out and bought the Mario Switch edition after selling my original Switch. Now, did I need a new Switch? No, I did not. But did I want the red Mario one? Yes, I did. And so obviously, digitally, I currently own Mario 3D World on the Wii U. I actually still have it hooked up because my nephew Tyler comes over and he still likes to play on it, so that's why it's still hooked up to the TV. But they could have easily said, "Hey, listen, if you have this digital edition, all you have to do is give us $10 and we'll just move it over." But no, I went out and I paid $60 because I'm a fan of Mario. I'm a fan of Nintendo, but more specifically, Mario 3D World is one of my favorite games. Like, I really, really enjoy it, and I'm having just as much fun now. Another example, Sony. I have currently sitting literally in my collector's case next to me, the collector's edition of Neo 2 and Neo 1. And they just released a $70 edition with both of those PlayStation 5 games with the visual upgrades. Now, obviously, it would be nice to know that I could I'm not even sure if I will get the visual upgrades with Neo 1 and 2 if I put them in my PlayStation 5, or do I actually have to buy the special 2-pack that's $70? But either or, it's pretty gross that they're charging $70 for these old games. Now, this is where we start getting into the weeds of things with why Microsoft is doing things right. And, news on backwards compatibility for the Xbox Series X and S is rumored to be coming shortly, like I said in the opening. According to GameRant, where I pulled this story, news on how backwards compatibility will work for the Xbox Series X should be arriving soon, according to Jason Ronald, the director of product management at Microsoft, who recently sat down with friend of this show, Larry Herb, also known as Major Nelson. And the conversation touched on multiple topics, including backwards compatibility. Now, regarding the backwards compatibility, it's expected that the next enhancement for games that obviously are considered backwards compatible, that I would imagine will include Xbox 360, and I'm assuming even some Xbox One games are going to get a double addition of frame rate. That's right, they're doubling the FPS on many of these older games. Now, Kirby, I want to bring you right into the conversation here because you have a pretty incredible theory on how they're going to do that. Now, before you bring up your slideshow, I want you to kind of just bring the fans in as to what exactly are they doing.
So yeah, thanks. So for those who aren't aware, this rumor comes from a Spanish channel by the name of El Analista de Bits, which it's like a Digital Foundry like channel on YouTube, and he put out a tweet on his Twitter that said, on the 17th, which is tomorrow, I'm going to have some interesting content available for Xbox fans. And because of the nature of that channel, and because of the last summer, I believe they mentioned this FPS doubling tech for games with locked frame rate, people are theorizing that this is going to be what's revealed tomorrow. And he ended up deleting the tweet later on, probably NDA reasons, but
yeah,
the cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah.
All right. And one other thing I want to make clear is what games this is going to work on, because it's not all of them.
Okay.
And so there are some criteria. One, the frame rate has to be locked via VSync. To either 30 or 60 frames per second. Games with unlocked frame rates are already benefiting from boost on the backwards compatibility on Series X and S. 2, it cannot be a game that ties even a single line of code to the frame rate. Like, game logic cannot be tied to the frame rate whatsoever. If it even one thing, it's off the table.
Okay.
Secondly, you're likely going to need a 120 hertz capable display to double any 60 frames per second games that are eligible.
Okay. I mean, it sounds very specific. I would imagine that a lot of the older games were probably locked. Like, for instance, would Ninja Gaiden be one of those games?
It could be. I mean, when I explain it, it'll start to make more sense. But like, if we were talking like NES and SNES and Genesis games, yeah, like those wouldn't work. Anyone who's used an emulator with turbo functionality will know exactly why, because those games tie everything to the frame rate.
Gotcha.
But with the advancements in the jump to 3D, we were able to move away from that into something that's called delta rendering, which is what enables this. What's it called? This boosting. All right, so I'm gonna hit up where is it? Screen share. Hold on.
There we go. Okay, so we're gonna We're gonna add this to the screen, folks. Like I said, the gameplay that you normally see will be coming as soon as this slideshow is done. But we're gonna allow Kirby to kind of run with his theory on how this is going to get done. And first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this, because obviously I certainly don't have the tech skills to do a slideshow. Yes, to talk about what you're going to break down for everyone that's listening. It's certainly a big deal. And so Zemi, we will come back to you as soon as he's done with this slide. So Kirby, take it away, brother.
All right. So here's my theory on how the back compat FPS doubling works. First, though, we need to understand how normal back compat for locked frame rate games works. So normally when you are displaying a game, your GPU contains a special piece of silicon known as the display encoder. It has two primary jobs: transform the final frame in VRAM, that's the memory on the GPU, into an HDMI signal your display can understand. Secondly, handle special non-audio-visual signals. They're kind of like commands to and from the GPU/display. So this is enter VSync, the technique used by games to lock frame rates to a certain target. It works by the display tells the GPU when it's ready to refresh, which is why if you've played games on PC and you disable VSync, you will often get tearing because the synchronization is not being the GPU is ignoring the synchronization requests of the monitor. So here you can see it says, I'm ready to display a new frame, send it over, Roger. And then what will happen is while VSync processes between the display encoder, the GPU reports the status back to the driver, which is the piece of software that controls what the GPU does. The driver, in turn, checks to see if it's a game with a lower target frame rate lock than the display refresh rate, and only informs the game that a VSync has occurred if it's on the right interval. So like 30 FPS on 60 hertz will only inform the game every other refresh. 30 on 120 is every 4 refreshes, and 60 on 120 is every other refresh. So normally what it'll do, but the way VSync works is that it doesn't, you kind of have to send over, like you can't just not send over a frame. You have to send it over to whatever the monitor's refresh rate is. So if you're playing on a higher refresh rate display than the game runs at in frame rate, your video encoder has to take the previous frame, duplicate it, and resend it over HDMI to your display. Then once it's actually time to refresh, the GPU driver will tell the game it's ready. The game will produce a new frame, and then finally the GPU video encoder will send it over to your display.
Nice. I love the the back and forth with the with the comic bubbles. That
I mean, it's called, when the commands is the terminology we use for it is called talking to each other. So
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, dude. Well, listen, okay. So now that you've showed this to us, right?
Oh, there's still like 4 more slides. So
right.
Sorry, so now under enhanced back compat with the doubling. So under FPS doubling, the driver lies to the game about when it's time to refresh, instead telling the game to refresh every single interval or twice as often. And then, so you can see here, it's like, oh, it tells the game it's time to refresh, even though it's not supposed to be running above 60 hertz or something.
Okay.
And then it sends it over, and then that would be the normal one. So, and then one other method that's possible is in DirectX. We have this method called present1, and this is what kind of sets up how the game tells the GPU to set up the VSync. Okay. And if you were to say use this with a 0 as the argument or the parameter, it would set that's VSync off. With a 1, that is whatever the display's maximum refresh rate is. A 2 would be half of that. 3 would be a third. 4 a fourth, etc. So another option is which I think is a little unlikely, but at the driver level, we could transform all, do it at 1 or do it every other frame. Basically, make the 2s all 1s.
Okay, so basically, what you're saying is that Okay, so here's my question. My question is, this seems like it does take, like, you have to want to do this. Like Jason Ronald and his team had to have sat down and said, you know something? It's great that we can play older games and on your new consoles, and we know that that Microsoft specifically has said that they think generations are important, meaning the OG Xbox, the Xbox 360, the Xbox One, and of course current titles are going to be released for the Series X and S. So they had to want to do this. My question to you is, how big of a deal is this going to be for older games, more specifically the Xbox game community? Is this something that is going to be done, and we may not see this done by Sony and Nintendo?
Yeah, like I said, this requires a lot of low-level kind of tinkering with the operating system and the driver, and potentially even some special hardware. I mean, I'm not a silicon engineering expert, so maybe you could do it with any bog standard GPU, but I don't think that Sony or Nintendo, even though technically they could, but they just don't have the know-how to get this done in a timely manner to kind of respond or counter this from Xbox.
Okay, I mean, again, it's so basically this is going to be exclusive, at least for the time being, and we can expect that. I would listen. Nintendo is Nintendo. They have always been walking to their beat of their own drum, so I don't see anything even remotely coming close to this. Rather, I don't even know if we're going to get a Switch Pro like has been rumored. For Sony, I definitely don't see Sony doing this, because Sony wants to make money the same way they're trying to charge $70 for 2 old games where I own them and I'm not even sure if I'm going to get the same advancements. I mean, because I know that one of the big things with Neo is that it runs at 120 frames per second. Well, I have both games right here. Am I going to get that advantage? I honestly, I don't know, and probably not. So this is a big deal. Zemi, let's get Zemi's games in on the conversation. Zemi, yeah. Look, again, you're a much more tech savvy dude than I am, which is why I come to you with a lot of questions. Obviously, this goes way over my brain pan, but the way that that Kirby broke it down is, at least for me, was readily understandable. For you, as someone that has a backlog as probably as tall as you are, how big of a deal is this if you are someone that enjoys playing some of the older Xbox games?
I don't think that this is, a deal maker necessarily. I don't think that this is going to drive a lot of people over to the Xbox brand so that they can play, and as Kirby said, whatever games that this, will affect is still kind of unknown. It just depends on the actual coding of the game, how the frame lock is implemented. But I don't think that, this move is going to bring Sony players over to the Xbox brand so they can play Red Dead Redemption 2 and 60. Well, I'm sorry, that's already in 60. Ninja Gaiden in 60 frames per second per se, right? But what I think that this really does is, and it kind of shows what Xbox has been doing here recently, is enough small changes, small additions add up to be a huge thing, and that huge thing being, the Xbox platform, right? So it's not so much about how big of a thing this is. It's just the fact that they're doing it whenever they don't need to be doing it. And I think I've made this point, on previous shows as well, is that Xbox has really been going out of their way to add things that they literally really don't even need to be adding, but they're doing it because they know that some gamers will appreciate it. And that really speaks volumes of the Xbox brand, who they are, what they believe their company is about. And it will undoubtedly resonate with gamers. With all of the gamers, no, because not every gamer is going to want to go back and play these older games, even if they are in 60 frames per second. But it really is fanfare to a lot of gamers. And to kind of touch on the whole Nintendo PS situation of adapting this, I would be kind of shocked if they did, because whenever you look at it on paper, it may not seem like the most, I guess, complex thing. Just by like design, like you would imagine, okay, well, these two software companies, they could just go at it and get it done, but it's going to take a tremendous amount of time. Time is money to these companies, and there really isn't a big reason or a big drive. They're not really going to hear a lot from their pre-existing fan bases, a lot of clamoring that they want this type of feature on the Nintendo console, on the PlayStation consoles. So I would be really shocked if we saw PlayStation or Nintendo do this, because it's not the biggest deal. But once again, enough small things add up to be one really big thing. And we can see that that's kind of Xbox's direction with a lot of what they've been doing these last couple of years. So it's great to see that, they're interested in doing this. I mean, honestly, just the fact that they allow the level of backwards compatibility in the first place is a huge win. That really kind of set them apart, this upcoming generation from previous generations. And it definitely helped where they didn't have a huge number of launch titles. It kind of made that not that big of a deal because, yeah, you didn't have that many launch titles, but you still had all of the games from the previous generation, which, you could play on your new hardware, which couldn't be said in years before, right? So, not the biggest, news story, not the biggest deal. Of course, it will be for some gamers, but, it kind of doesn't have to be. And it's just great to see that Xbox is doing things like this.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I do think that this is something to be commended. Again, they don't have to do this. This is thinking out very, I would even say way outside of the box, because they could simply just say, yeah, well, your games just run on the console and hey, good for you. But they're taking it to another level and doing things that, again, like you said, a lot of what goes into the design of these consoles is money. Time equals money, and they're still finding a way to add additional things that don't necessarily have to be added, but they're doing it because of fan service. Let me just thank two people that dropped 2 super chats. First of all, we have Anthony O, I believe it's OA. Thank you so much, Anthony. Thanks. First of all, thanks for being here, brother, and thank you for the outstanding $2 super chat. And it says, "Keep doing what you do, Mr. Boom." Thank you very much for that. And a good friend, generous friend of the show, Pixelbit G, drops an outstanding $5 super chat and says, "I think some of these things are more than just fan service. To me, auto HDR is more of a verification that machine learning is a real thing on the series platform." That's a great point, dude. That is a great point. I mean, listen, there's not much more that could be said about this. All I can say is that in the next week or two, we are expecting some pretty big Xbox news. I don't necessarily know if it's acquisitions, new game announcements, or the confirmation of some shows that they have coming up. But from what I understand and what has been relayed to me, there should be some big news dropping in the next few days. And listen, this is a great way to kick it off. And again, Kirby, thanks so much for giving us the technical breakdown. I think there's a lot of people in the chat that didn't expect it. I think a lot of people appreciate it. I certainly do. And of course, Zemi, thank you for bringing your knowledge into the conversation. But you know something? Look, here's the thing. I want to move on to topic number 2, and this one comes to us late, and I want to just start off with the word of caution, because prior to the show going live, we had word, and I actually watched Randall Thor's video from yesterday regarding the potential of Techland becoming a Microsoft first-party studio. Now, obviously, we have this on 2 different points of authority, and I'm going to break down where these came from and where we're getting the information that maybe want to make this a topic of conversation. And again, treading ever so lightly, because there are some news stories saying that Techland is out there saying, no, we're not getting acquired. But let's for shits and giggles, let's continue the conversation as if they are and where I got the information from. Now, obviously, and this is where it gets kind of funny. It's almost to the point of being silly. When you say the word Xbox, normally you're going to think like, Xbox Live, or more specifically, Xbox Game Pass, which we're going to be talking about in a second, because they got some big games being added, and one of which I cannot stop gushing over. But the word acquisition, Zemi, seems to be almost a weekly thing, and I get that some people get a little, I guess it gets a little long in the tooth. But here's the thing. A couple of weeks ago, a YouTuber, a very popular YouTuber who has almost 750,000 subscribers by the name of Jeremy ACG Penter, claimed that on the podcast Defining Duke, that Microsoft is seeking to purchase a 2021 video game exclusive. In the process of doing so, Microsoft would also acquire the developer/publisher. ACG, however, didn't outright say it was Techland specifically, though he did say that he knew people there and that he wouldn't be the one to be spilling the beans. Now, this is where we start getting into the weeds once again. The additional details come instead from a second insider/leaker who goes by the name of Special Ed on Twitter. Now, if you don't know who he is a prominent leaker for many things, specifically when it comes to Xbox. And here is what he's the Special Ed says that after digging around, they found out that what ACG was talking about was in fact Techland. The video game ACG refers to is also said to be Dying Light 2. Special Ed does not make this claim with certainty, though he did make it very clear. This is what, again, he said this on his Twitter regarding the digging around. Now, the rumor in summary is that Microsoft is in pursuit of or has already made a deal to acquire Techland and perhaps a console exclusivity deal for Dying Light 2 in the process. The leaks don't make it clear whether Microsoft is still pushing for the deal or if the deal has already been finalized, though these leaks offer no source of compelling evidence other than ACG's predictions, which, to be honest, has had a mixed track record. But Special Ed, who has made accurate big calls in the past, makes me kind of wonder if this is true. Now, perhaps not coincidentally, there are other rumors that could be tied to this acquisition if accurate. For example, in January, Techland mentioned that Dying Light 2 news would be coming soon. Another rumor says that they have there's a yet to be announced Xbox event in mid-February, which we don't know about possibly. Zemi, look, with rumors, we have to take everything with a grain of salt. I know that you immediately said, hey, boom, take a look at these. Just want to throw this out there to you. Techland is saying nay, but just for shits and giggles. Now, again, this is all speculation. This is all grain of salt. This is, I obviously gave the two specific people that started talking about this, and obviously, ACG didn't mention Techland, but Dying Light 2 has had I don't want to say a rocky development. This game was supposed to be out a couple of years ago, and it was supposed to launch. And we always wondered why it didn't. Was it in development hell? What were they having financial issues? Because Techland is not that big of a company. And before we even heard about this particular acquisition, Zemi, we did hear in the middle of last year that Microsoft was in Poland potentially shopping not one but two big time publishers/developers. What are your thoughts on this, with Techland? I mean, obviously they have Dying Light 1, which is still getting content, which is insane. And obviously Dying Light 2 is a big project. These are two big IPs that have a huge fan base. Would this be a good acquisition? And do you think that there's anything to this?
So you do mention something very, very interesting there, and that's the whole Poland thing. And we did hear a lot of rumors, 6 months, a year back, that Xbox was, looking around in Poland, that they were interested in acquiring a studio in Poland, or something along those lines. So, for that, this definitely hits that checkbox, right? But the main thing that just keeps coming back to me is those articles stating that and Techland stating that they're not being acquired, right? And I just don't understand the idea of them just coming out and doing a flat out lie like that, right? If it was true, I would imagine them more to being just radio silent, rather than coming out and just making a bold, flat out lie. So for that reason, I don't really, think, there's a lot of validity here, as far as, Techland acquisition. I don't think that it is probably the acquisition that we should be looking at. What I think would actually be an even, more interesting, conversation is what studios fall into ACG's, prediction that a game that's coming out in 2020, Xbox is looking to acquire or get exclusive rights to, while also, getting the company. I would love to see, a full list of like all the studios that we, can speculate are coming out with a game this year, and that would be willing to join up with Xbox. I think that would be, an amazing future topic, maybe even for Thursday's show, possibly. Now, as far as how good of an acquisition Techland would be, I think it would be a fairly good acquisition. I think that there's definitely companies out there that I would personally like to see Microsoft acquire, and I think would be in some ways better suited to being acquired by Microsoft. But Techland's not a bad pick. I pulled up their Wikipedia. I don't know if they actually own these IP. I would just presume that they do. But Call of Juarez, really enjoyed that game.
That was actually that was quite good, dude.
Yeah, it was a really good game, and that's honestly probably the only thing that I would really be excited for. Dead Island, I played the first one. That was pretty fun. I played it with a friend. And then of course I've never played Dying Light. But and having those two kind of more horror titles kind of has me hesitant on whether or not Techland is a good acquisition. Not because I'm a coward. I mean, everyone knows I'm a coward, right? I don't like scary games. I get that, but I'm thinking more from like an actual, variety is the spice of life and marketing approach. They have a lot of horror games right now, right? They have Hellblade, which isn't straight up horror, but it definitely has that creepy vibe to it. They have Project Mara. They have the Medium, which is I think like a timed exclusive, but is still an exclusive. And then of course they have State of Decay. So, and there might be some other horror titles that I'm forgetting as well. So from that approach, I don't think it's the best acquisition because, that studio is offering them a lot of things that they kind of already have a decent bit of already, right? Whereas I would kind of like to see them more go along the line of getting, a platformer. Or getting a fighter game, or getting a studio that makes fighting games, or getting a studio that makes really good platformers, or getting a studio that makes really, really good child-friendly content, right? That's what I would kind of like to see them more get out of an acquisition rather than Techland. But I'm not going to say it would be the worst acquisition possible. I just don't think it's very likely from the information I've seen. And yeah, pretty much.
I mean, listen, it makes sense. Obviously, if they're saying no, then it's probably no. But I just find it so. When you start hearing different YouTubers making content, and we're not talking about people we don't know. I mean, I watched obviously Randall Thor, who's a friend of the show, and obviously I'm a friend of his show as well. He's a friend of the community, and he's not the he just surpassed 75,000 subs, which is incredible, and well deserved. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to that amount, but you know what? Dreams do come true. So, but I don't see him running with a story that he doesn't feel confident about. And again, we've heard the Poland conversation before. We've heard Techland before. We've heard People Can Fly. You know what I'm saying? There's Bloober Team. There's several teams that I think would make proper acquisitions. I just checked. Right now, they have 300 plus employees at Techland. And that seems like that, again, it really does kind of fall into what Microsoft likes to look for when it comes to acquisitions. And again, we're going to know shortly whether or not there's any truth to this. Obviously there's going to be a point where Microsoft is going to be talking acquisitions. We don't know when that's going to be. I don't expect anything until March 5th, which is when the Bethesda deal is supposed to be inked, like pen to paper. And once that's officially done, then I would imagine we could possibly hear anything. But, Kirby, Louise, let's get your opinion on this. Now, look, acquisitions is something that we're going to continue to talk about until Microsoft says otherwise. Because obviously, thanks to the interview with Satya Nadella right after the acquisition of Bethesda, he made it perfectly clear that they're not done yet and that they're continuing to look to build. He actually said something to the effect, why should we build from scratch when we can just certainly buy? And that makes sense. And to add a lot of these studios, like a People Can Fly, like a Bloober Team, potentially like a Techland, you bring a lot of talent for games that a lot of people really enjoyed. Again, we don't know, and we're probably not going to know, maybe even to the middle of the year, maybe not till E3, but when you start hearing other people that have been known to leak things in the past and have been spot on, could there be smoke, or should I say, could there be fire where there's smoke?
Well, my policy surrounding leaks and insiders, or source TM, as I like to call them, is that if they don't have a spotless track record, they should no proof. I don't buy it.
Okay, makes sense. That makes sense.
Any more than saying my uncle works at Nintendo and he says blah blah blah. So I mean, I'm really, I'd have to look at that person's track record, kind of decide for myself. I don't know about much about the person that you said was, what was his name? Special Ed. Special Ed. Yeah. I don't know much about what he's claimed or leaked or whatnot. So unfortunately, I can't really make a decision on if I think his leak is any good or not. But as for is Microsoft, would Techland be a good acquisition, I believe was the other question.
Yeah.
And that's another one where unfortunately I haven't played any of their games, so I would have no idea. But
I mean, are you familiar with Dying Light?
To an extent. I think I've watched one gameplay video of it.
Okay.
But I just don't think that they would be the best option for an acquisition for Microsoft. Not that they would be bad or anything, but there are better options that I think would take priority, as like Zemi said, more rounding out the portfolio of Xbox game studios with whatever they're missing right now.
Well, I mean, for me personally, one of the things that they're missing is family fun platformers. Which, of course, I'm still going to be beating the I want a new Kirby. I'm a new Kirby. I want a new Banjo-Kazooie. I've been calling for that for quite some time, and I know a lot of people in the community are like, well, it's just another platformer. But if you're a fan of platformers, and Microsoft is looking to do things with Game Pass by offering a significant value. A proposition that has a wide range of games to play, then they need to continue to add to that, and I think that would be a big one. But listen, folks, again, this came in late. I mean, shortly before we went live, and obviously I did pull enough information to want to make it a topic. I'm interested to know what you guys and gals think. Where do you want to see Microsoft take their next acquisition? Would Techland be something that you would be happy with? Would you like to see Dying Light 2 become a console exclusive? I mean, I certainly would. I love the first one. Zemi might play this because there's co-op. I think he would still.
Oh, I would. No, I would play it. I would play it. If it has co-op, I will play it.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be running for your life most of the time, but at least you can fight back. So
yeah. Well, now, Boom. You know how usually I let you go through every door first.
Yes.
Now, whenever we're in situations like that, I want to be in the front, right? I don't want to be the guy in the back getting chased, right? Because worst case scenario, I want you to die first. But no, yeah. But also, Boom, just real quick. I mean, not to just backpedal here. But one thing that just one aspect of this that really fascinates me is, there is ultimately going to be a limit on how many studios Xbox or Microsoft is going to be willing to acquire, right? There is going to be some cutoff point. We don't know what that's going to be. Rumors are, that they're potentially looking to get a maximum of 30 studios, right?
Yes.
But there eventually will be a cutoff point. There has to be. They're a business. They're a smart business. That's why they're making, a lot of money, right? So whenever you take that into consideration, you would imagine that there's only going to be a limited number of, more acquisitions that they're going to be willing to get. With taking that into consideration, is Techland a company that you would like to see them acquire? Or do you think that there would be better companies suited that just better companies that you would rather see them get if they only have, 7 more spots on their roster to fill? Is Techland, one of the players, that you would want to see them, get for their team?
That's a good question. And something, to be honest with you, based on my enjoyment with Dying Light 1, I didn't beat it. Sadly enough, but I did play enough of it to say that, I'm a fan of the franchise, and to know what we're going to be getting with the different factions and the different paths you can choose with Dying Light 2. I would think that, yes, I would be okay with them acquiring them, to be honest with you, because I think that they are a strong enough studio that, yes, have they only made those 2 particular games and Call of Juarez that most people know? Yes, but what it proves is that they do have the chops to bring a big AAA game to Xbox. And again, we don't know outside of Halo Infinite what else is coming in 2021 for Xbox. I mean, we can all sit here and summarize and potentially, guesstimate that, yeah, sure, we're going to probably get a new Forza. I mean, I think that's probably granted.
Mm-hmm.
But past Halo Infinite and Forza, we really don't know. And if Microsoft is going to be short AAA bombs because they start rolling out next year with Hellblade, because again, I still think Hellblade is this year. I'm probably wrong, but it could very well be. But for all purposes for the conversation, maybe they need a 3rd or 4th game that's not necessarily coming from the first party games that they're working on with the 23 studios. I mean, I don't necessarily know. Does the Techland or next studio, let's say for instance, it's not Techland. Let's say, for instance, it's another studio that has a AAA game coming out that they want to be in their lineup, to be in Game Pass, to be exclusive to the console this year. Is it necessary for Microsoft to make this purchase? I don't know. But it's certainly interesting. Again, I don't think anyone in this chat, and I'm not even sure how many people, I kind of just walked away. We have almost 300 people here, which is awesome. That, we could see another potential. See, what I'm hoping for, to be honest, as great as Bethesda is going to be for Xbox, and I think we can all say that wholeheartedly, and I'm saying that because Thursday's show is going to be pure hellfire. And I think there's going to be a lot of big opinions. Zemi still sits with he doesn't like the exclusive things, and that's going to come back in full force because we're going to be talking about it once again this Thursday because it was raging out of control as the March 5th signature date looms. I'm not sure if anyone's been paying attention to social media, but there were a lot of people, including some big names like Andrea Renee, for instance. Now, I don't watch her stuff, but I know that she is hell-bent and believes that all of these IPs are going to be going to Sony's PlayStation 5, which I beg to differ. That's just my opinion, but we're going to get into that into deep detail on Thursday's Xbox Factor podcast. But I do want to, I think there's a couple super chats came in. There's one right here. Let me just read this, but I don't want to miss anything. King One Supreme drops an outstanding $2 super chat and says, Microsoft has too many first-person games. Buy Remedy or Asobo. I mean, listen, dude, I'm right there with you. I think Remedy would be a tremendous addition because I want a new Alan Wake, and we got a small taste of that with the Control, the AEW DLC for Control, which I'm playing through right now, and is pretty dope. But I kind of want, as great as it is to hear his voice, as great it is to see what Alan Wake looks like on next-gen consoles, to be honest with you, I thoroughly enjoyed Control. Like, I really enjoyed that. I want an official, Alan Wake too. Like because obviously we had Alan Wake, we had Alan Wake's American Nightmare. I honestly want. I know Zemi doesn't want it because he doesn't like.
I want another Quantum Break, man. Oh,
I agree. Yes,
goodness gracious, I would love another Quantum Break. Now I don't do the Alan Wake because it's scary, but Quantum Break, I can back that horse, throughout the entire Derby. I really, really, really enjoyed Quantum Break. I would love to see them do that. There's a lot of like older, first party exclusives that Xbox did, like in the beginning of the Xbox One generation, like Rise. Like I would love to see another Rise.
Everyone in this chat, we have 300 people here. I think everyone would agree with you. I think it's almost a travesty of video game justice that we don't have a Rise 2.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of games I would love to see them revisit. The same way that you feel about Banjo-Kazooie, I kind of feel about Rise and Quantum Break. I would just love to see those games come back.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Listen, real quick, RRD drops an outstanding $2 super chat and says, hit that like button. And I definitely appreciate that, brother. Thank you very much for the channel support and, of course, your generosity. But you know what? Listen, I have another topic here. Now, this is... I am not letting this go. There are certain, listen, and you're laughing because you know where I'm going with this. Look, here's the thing, folks. I think that at some point with my complaining or distaste for Halo 5 story, and I've been playing Halo 5, by the way. I'm doing some, recording some video for the show. Graphically, it's a masterpiece. If you have not picked up Halo 5 in a while and you have a Series X, give at least load up some of the Master Chief levels. There's not many of them, unfortunately, but there's enough to give you a glimpse as to what 343 can bring to Halo Infinite. And I bring Halo Infinite into the conversation once again because, again, I'm putting on my conspiracy hat here, folks, and again, I'm not letting this go. I am sorry to say that I think that there's something here. Now, again, if you want to tune out and you're like, okay, Boom has lost it, I hear you. But I would say just stick around so I can at least present my case to you, and then you can tell me if I'm a lunatic or not. Now, we have been talking Halo Infinite for a lot of reasons. But recently, we have been talking about Halo Infinite having a side piece or a side project, if you will. Now, we talked about it last week on the Xbox Factor podcast, and the community manager at 343 decided to shoot a torpedo into my theory. But I have an additional theory, and I'm going to put on my Halo conspiracy hat, and I want you to take a trip down to Speculation Town, folks, because quite frankly, I think you're going to enjoy this topic, okay? Now, I have some rumors as these of what the second project could potentially be, and I'm going to say something that's so off kilter, so crazy that there may be some truth to it. Now, look, Halo is a lot of things. Now, with Halo Infinite coming, we know confirmed that we are getting some incredible Master Chief worthy content. And I think it's safe to even assume that Master Chief is probably going to be the main part of the game. I mean, you're gonna again. The original rumor said that there was going to be some side stories, side missions that you could potentially find, but I think that the game is mostly going to be with Master Chief. Now, with that said, I think it's okay to admit that if there is a second Halo game in development, it could potentially not star Master Chief, and most of us would be okay with it simply because we have Master Chief. This isn't like a Halo 5 situation where, we only got him for 3 out of the 11 levels, which was awful, right? But this is where I put my Halo conspiracy hat on. I think a lot of people in this chat will admit that real funny 6A says no, you're crazy no matter what, but we're still here though. I appreciate the honesty, brother. Thank you for that. I think we have heard, Zemi, that 343 wanted to do some different things with Halo. And I think that we've seen small glimpses of what a third-person Halo would look like when Master Chief grabs one of the big guns, right? Mm-hmm. And he's walking around. And I have seen that, and I say, well, I wish I could play the whole game like this. And I think there are a lot of people in the chat that that would probably want a third-person, potential third-person Halo game, even if it's starring another character that's not Master Chief. But one of the things that's very interesting is I pulled a story from July 27th of 2020, where 343 Industries has confirmed that the Halo Infinite is going to be taking place on a piece of Halo lore known as Zeta Halo. This is also known as Installation 07. Now, if you're not familiar with that, and again, I don't know all of the lore. I haven't read all the books. I'll be the first one to talk about, to admit that. But Zeta Halo is something I do know because they do experiments on the Flood there. And what's interesting is that Zeta Halo is going to be the location where Infinite is supposedly, and this is confirmed by 343. So this is where I put on my hat for a second. Now, we know for a fact that Halo Infinite is set sometime after the 19th of September in 2561. And it would then place it 3 years after the conclusion of Halo 5 Guardians. And there's that 3-year unknown block of what happened to mankind that we're probably going to get filled in either through cutscenes or potentially played out in real time. We don't actually know. But this is where I start to kind of, my wheels start to, to turn a little bit, Zemi. Now, my theory comes on the original leak that came from the 4chan forums, which stated that there would be side missions that included many characters found throughout the Halo universe that include Atriox, Arbiter, Locke, Palmer, and many others. It would be pretty dope, to be honest with you, if we saw something, and I want to bring up, I specifically put Hive Busters as the gameplay in the background for today's show for this particular topic, because I think that the Hive Busters DLC is something that Microsoft may, in fact, go to for future titles moving forward. This is a huge success. It didn't get as much advertising as I would have personally liked, but I think that seeing something that's anywhere between 3 to 5 hours as a side story could potentially come to something like a Halo Infinite And I'm banking on, and again, this is a real reach here, folks. This is what I want. I have no proof to this, but I would love to see a 3 to 5 hour side story with a third person horror Halo story based on the flood. And I don't know if this is going to come to fruition or not. Again, it's a huge stretch here, but I think that I might be onto something because, again, what they did with Hive Busters, I think it was so successful, it cannot be ignored. And why shouldn't something like this come to Halo Infinite? Now, I'm not saying it's going to launch side by side. They just said that they were looking for a producer to work on Halo Infinite. Well, yeah, they're not actually lying and saying he's not working on Halo Infinite. Maybe he's working on Halo Infinite, a side story that could potentially be like Hive Busters. Now, Zemi, I know that I said potentially a lot, and I know this is a stretch, but based on all of the information, could there actually be a side story set up like Hive Busters that is within Halo Infinite's universe?
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know if like the whole Hive Buster phenomenon is going to be like a continuation that we see from other Xbox games. I would love it to be true because I really enjoyed the Hive Busters. I really thought it was a big surprise and Game Pass the month that it came out. And so I would really like to see them kind of continue that formula. Now, your ideas of a third-person horror-esque game mode or whatever, I don't think that is very well suited for for like the Hive Buster kind of formula. I think that would be. It's not a bad idea. I think it is a good idea. But I think it's better suited for a standalone game rather than a short 3-hour story. Attached to a first-person shooter. But with that being said, I think it would be absolutely incredible if they did create, a side piece of content where maybe you're playing as an ODST, and you can squad up with friends. You're in this dark, dingy, cave or facility or whatever, and there's just flood coming out from every single direction. And I think the most important thing about, side content like that is to not make it an afterthought. Put an extreme amount of care and polish into this, and then have that 4-hour horror-esque story that you can play with your friends as an ODST trooper fighting off the flood, and then maybe even add in a multiplayer component, kind of like what Call of Duty does with its zombies mode, where you're hunkered down, or what Gears does with Horde, where you're hunkered down in a small area and you're fighting off waves and wave after wave after wave of flood. I think that something like that could really be done, and could be done very, very well with a lot of success, tied along in a Hive Buster, extension to Halo Infinite. I 110% can back behind that. And what you're saying with, the community manager saying that, no, this producer role is for Halo Infinite. It could be for, side content, similar to this. Absolutely, it could be. Now, whenever I heard them talking about being able to play as, Palmer and Locke and, all these other characters in Halo Infinite, I always imagined that they were more of talking about the core game, right? Like whenever the game comes out, you're going to be able to play different sections as these characters. And so that's what I've kind of always thought was their direction, or their, kind of, direction with that. But I think that the Halo universe is huge. There's a ton of lore. I would absolutely love to see them extend into other branches. Honestly, I would really love to see them share the franchise with other studios who really do a damn good job with third-person games, and allow them a go at making that dark, gritty next Halo game. I would absolutely love to see the Halo franchise expand a lot. but I don't want it to really be an afterthought. I don't want it to be, you know, a Spartan assault, right?
Oh God, no. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
you definitely don't want that.
absolutely. I don't want it to be an afterthought. I want it to be something that they put a lot of care into. But you know, to just kind of, you know, harken back to, you know, your initial question. Yes, I absolutely think that the Hive Buster formula could work tremendously well with Halo Infinite. I would love to see it. But then going beyond that, I would love to see them do even more than just the, you know, a couple of, you know, extension, standalone, you know, DLC stories with Halo Infinite. I would really love them, you know, to see them expand the franchise, you know, beyond just your first person shooters. The only thing is with your idea, I just don't see the third person horror kind of game that or extension that you're, you know, imagining really meshing very well as a standalone side piece to a first person shooter.
I mean, listen. I mean, again, I did incorporate my theory with a 3 to 5 hour Hive Buster DLC. But what if the second project? What if the second project is something like an ODST? Now, ODST was made. It was made, you know, as a side content to incorporate Halo 3. And again, obviously, the main character was Buck, who showed up in obviously a Halo 5.
The main, just jumping in, the main character was not Buck. It was the rookie. You were playing as the rookie, but Buck was in there.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Thank you for the correct. Yes, you are playing as the rookie. Buck was a part of it. What if you are playing Buck in because obviously he's not dead. So again, this you know, hypothetical side project. See, my thing is it's the wording that really does get me, and why I think because the guy's name is John, and I think it's Janazek is who the community manager is that came out and said that no, that's just boilerplate talk for hiring a new producer. But again, he's not lying when he says that they could potentially be hiring a producer for Halo Infinite. But what in Halo Infinite? Because the game is just from listen. I mean, again, it's. I don't think I'm talking out of turn here, Zemi. The game is, from what we understand, done. The people have played the game from front to back and back to front. They're just fixing the graphics, which a lot of people had a problem with. So why would you need a producer for that? See, that's where it gets a little strange to me. Look, we're not going to know if there's a side project coming out. I know a lot of people in the chat are saying they just want Halo Infinite to be good. Guess what? I think it's going to be fantastic, to be honest. I have real faith that with the return of some OGs that understood what it was to make a Halo game, we're going to get some big things. But you know what? I want to bring Kirby Louise into the conversation. Kirby, listen, obviously you're a developer. And you obviously understand development talk. Is it safe to potentially assume that Microsoft, or more specifically 343 Industries, would have some side projects in mind for the announced 10-year plan for Halo Infinite?
I think it's definitely possible. When you brought up what was it, the Mario 3D World port at the beginning of the show, that kind of this kind of reminded me of the how Nintendo kind of did a similar thing with the Captain Toad levels in that game.
Yes,
and they were basically, people liked them enough to get, I think, what was it, 1 or 2 spin-offs, ports to 3DS and Switch, etc. But I think you do have to take a little bit of I don't know how to put this, care or nuance with doing it, because they were still primarily platformers. Like, they just changed it around to be puzzles rather than jumping.
Gotcha.
So, I'm not sure, like, the idea of the third person horror thing, is it going too far? Like, straying from kind of the core first-person shooter? I don't know. Obviously, it depends on exactly how it works, but I definitely think that it would be possible if Halo Infinite's going to have like a 7 or 10-year lifespan to continuously add new missions or areas of the world or whatever with alternative gameplay, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. A couple people bring up some really good points. Z Black Riot, a good friend of the show, he says Xbox has 1,000 people working on Halo. Lots of room for side projects. And we have here Duke. He says, no, it probably will never happen, but a Dead Space styled Halo would be effing amazing. And see, that's really where I was going. Because look, we know what Halo is, right? And again, folks, this is a extremely hypothetical conversation, and obviously we have a really big show planned for Thursday. But I kind of wanted to add a little bit of fun to this Xbox 101, not only because we were talking with Kirby Louise, but again, I am still banking that they're working on something else. I find it very, very hard to believe, and again, maybe I'm not a producer, I don't know. But I find it hard to believe that they would be looking for a producer for Halo Infinite for a game that's already done. They're not going to be doing anything really different other than polishing this game to make it the best Halo we've ever played. And I have no doubt that's going to be the fact. I am still banking that there is something that is going to be considered a side story while telling the Halo Infinite, and I would love it to be exactly what this gentleman just said. I would love a different take on Halo. Listen, the Flood is scary, and if you remember playing through the Combat Evolved, when you got into those tight corridors. And you saw the stuff kind of happening to the other Marines, you're like, oh shit, you had plenty of oh shit moments. And it would be pretty damn awesome to see, considering that they're going to be on Zeta Halo, which is where they did experiments on the Flood, to incorporate that lore. Because again, I've been calling for the return of the Flood for quite some time. And I don't know how many people in the chat dig the Flood as much as I do, but I like the Flood. I think they're a very interesting race. And I don't know if can you, Zemi, incorporate both the Flood and and Atriox's crew in the same game? It might be too much, right?
Yeah, I mean, so kind of just to harken back to what I was saying, I really enjoy the idea that you're saying of like a third-person horror game that incorporates the Flood, right? But in all fairness, I think that you could do a third-person horror game even without the Flood. I think elites and brutes and jackals and those types of characters are scary enough if you are playing as the perspective of like an Oni agent or a Marine, just a regular guy, not a big Spartan with years and years of compounding training. I think that the actual Covenant itself is creepy, is a creepy enough set of characters for you to do a very good horror game. The only problem is that I just think it would be really hard to mesh that third person gameplay, as a side to a first person game. And I also think that you really wouldn't be giving enough respect to what you're talking about, right? I would much rather see like a third person horror, experience in the Halo universe to be its own standalone game. However, I think that you really could, make a quite creepy, addition to Halo Infinite, having you play as, ODST or Marines or whatever, first person with your buddies, exploring through, an old, facility on Installation 7, and discovering that the Flood is there or something, right? I think that there's really a lot that you could do with that. Just the whole third person aspect of it, I think would be better suited for a standalone game and would be kind of confusing and I don't think would work very well as a 3-hour side experience to a first person shooter. I would really like to see them, if they did take that third person approach, to make it its own standalone game and give that type of experience its own respect, rather than just making it just a side experience of a first person shooter.
I mean, listen, again, I love where everyone's going with this. And again, the chat has been really great. I mean, obviously, you walked along this path of lunacy with this old man, so I definitely appreciate it. Listen, again, I don't know what's going to happen. I know there's a lot of people very expecting big things. And let's see here. Pixelbit G says Atriox and the Flood are in Halo Wars 2, so yes, you can 100%. Yeah, you are right about that, because yes, you are fighting. There is Flood. I don't know. Sure. I mean, it's going to be interesting to say the least. But folks, listen, we are a few minutes past what this normal show is normally 60 minutes. We gave you 70 minutes today. I want to thank the 300 plus people that came out. Definitely want to thank the super chats that came out. Again, the generosity is tremendously appreciated, more than you know. And obviously you don't have to, but I definitely appreciate it. And again, if you want to further your support, there is channel membership, and it's $5 per month. You could just jump on. You can hit the subscribe button, and obviously you have have access to all of the different emojis that include obviously Game Genie Prime, who just put up the Larry Herb white gloves. But let me get out to the outros and get everyone out of here. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to spend an hour and change with us on this new Xbox program. As we get closer to E3, there's certainly going to be more deep dives that we're going to get on games, and potentially what they're going to be showing at E3 2021, which is confirmed to be all digital. And you can find that twice a week with 2 Xbox shows. If you're an Xbox fan, this is the place for you to be. We'll start with our very special guest, Kirby Louise. First of all, thanks so much for dropping the knowledge bombs today. Obviously, you made it certainly much easier for me to understand. I'm sure a lot of people really dug what they were, what you were putting down. Tell everyone about what you're working on, but more importantly, where can people reach out and strike up a conversation on social media?
Thanks. So right now I'm working on a number of programming projects. The main 2 are a pair of game engines for Xbox, PC, and Switch, and they are capable of both 2D and 3D graphics.
Nice.
And then the other projects are like an open source equivalent to the Digital Foundry toolkit and some tools for Minecraft with ray tracing. But you can reach out to me on Twitter at Kirby0Louise. I always have my DMs open, and just always shoot me a question at any time. I'll try to help you out with whatever. It was good being on. I can't wait for tomorrow to see if this back-compat FPS doubling rumor is true, and that's about it.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks so much for being here. Real quick before we get to Zemi's outro, I said I was going to mention it. They have some new information that came forward for Xbox Game Pass. Coming to console is Elite Dangerous. Killer Queen Black is coming to cloud and console. They also have here Deadfire Ultimate Edition. That's coming to cloud and console. Wreckfest, which I had a chance to review from the company, which is actually pretty damn good. It's coming to console, PC, and cloud. But the big one, folks, the big one is freaking Dirt 5 is coming to PC, cloud, and console. And you know why I'm happy? I'm happy because finally people are going to see what I have been raving about. I've been playing this game. I have I have so much footage recorded. It's obscene. That's how much I've been playing this game. It is as fun, and I'm going to say this, potentially even more fun than Forza Horizon 4. The control is so perfect. I don't even know what to say. I absolutely love the game. And now you don't have to buy it, folks. You can go out and you can download it on Xbox Game Pass later this month. Also, super hot Mind Control Delete is coming to PC, and Code Vein is coming to PC. So those are the 7 titles being added in the next couple of weeks. But Dirt 5, folks, yes, I'm telling you, you will be convinced once you play it. And we'll be talking about that later. Just, obviously you DM me or, at me on Twitter and tell me whether you loved it or you hated it. But Zemi Games, why don't you tell people about what you're working on, because obviously you got your incredible website that I think that you might be able to snag some more writers for, and also where can people reach out to you and strike up a conversation on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main thing that I'm doing, currently right now and kind of anymore is I'm really working to build a website called constantgamer.com. It's pretty much like an IGN, a Kotaku. The only difference is that, we try to stay more objective, more factual, and more relevant in our approach to gaming, news and features and reviews and just all of that type of gaming journalism. So if you're looking for a more objective place to get your gaming news, or read up on your gaming news rather, definitely check out constantgamer.com. In addition to that, we also have a community section that we post quizzes to semi-regularly. Boom has a great quiz on there for Resident Evil, and it spans through like all of the Resident Evil games. So if you're a big fan, if you want to, test your knowledge of the Resident Evil, franchise universe, definitely stop by the site and give that a try. And then Boom was mentioned this as well, and we are still looking for writers for the site. You don't have to be, some fancy person with a ton of knowledge in journalism. All you got to do is be a gamer that can string, a half decent sentence together, and we'll welcome you. So if you are interested in writing for constantgamer.com, just stop by the website. Click on the contact us button and then click on the button that says join the team and just fill out a short application and submit it in. And we are still doing video content on YouTube. The YouTube channel is called Constant Gamer. You guys can also check us out on Twitter, and just an easy way to get to both of those is in the top right-hand corner of the site, there's social buttons to just click, and it will take you directly to our social media pages. But yeah, Boom, man, this show is fantastic. We hit 3 topics, and a lot was talked about, man. This was a really good show.
I mean, listen, again, this is something, we are ever evolving the show as we continue to do this. We're only in week 5 of it. We're starting to see the numbers grow. Obviously, we had over 300 people, which is pretty dope. And obviously, I want to continue to grow. Again, we started out as a show that's going to talk specifically about 2 games and keep it moving. But I think that people want to hear news. So what Zemi and I are going to do is we're going to incorporate some of the games that are going to be talked about throughout the year that are big releases coming in 2021. But we're also going to incorporate some gaming news, some gaming happenings into the conversation. And again, we could potentially move this to it's never going to be a 2-hour show. This is meant to be a smaller Xbox topic. The big guns come out for the Xbox Factor on Thursdays, because that's when we have the whole crew together. But we certainly will not shy away from talking about Xbox happenings. And again, if you have ideas that you kind of want us to talk about, hit me up, hit Zemi or me in the DM, because we're always, our DMs are open, and we're always looking to obviously expand the content. But listen, folks, this has been a great show. I want to thank all of the super chats that have come in. The generosity is tremendously appreciated. I love all of the back and forth that the chat has. This is a very safe chat, thanks to our sheriff, known as Lethal Papa. Obviously keeping these streets safe by walking silently and carrying a very big band stick. So, of course, thank you so much for... Yeah, I just saw that, Lethal. And of course, speaking of Lethal Papa, he just took care of a real knucklehead that just jumped in at the last minute. And my God, I mean, listen, folks, you really got to ask yourself, what are you doing with your life if you got to come to someone's show and just be an ass? Don't do that. Come hang out, have fun, give your point. Everyone's point is valid, but don't be a D-bag like Lethal Papa who banded this guy. But anyway, folks.
That is a fantastic transition into what your dad used to tell you.
I know, exactly. That's absolutely right. My dad used to tell me a lot of things. He was, my God, my dad was my hero, who he's always going to be. But he taught us a lot of really important lessons. and one of which was treat others how you want to be treated, and also it doesn't cost anything to be nice. And you live by those rules, I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the newest episode
on the Xbox podcast.
yeah, of Xbox One-on-One. Take care, everyone. Have a good day, and we'll see you next week.